and welcome to week number 7 for plant biology here at NICC this fall. This week for our reading we're going to be looking at two main concepts when we're talking about how energy is captured and utilized by plants. We're going to be looking at photosynthesis and respiration. We're going to go back to Concepts of Biology textbook, chapters 4 and 5. So make sure you're reading in the correct chapter of the correct book. So again, Concepts of Biology is chapter 4 and 5. So we're going to be talking about metabolism and photosynthesis. Chapter 4 starts out talking about energy and metabolism, and it's important to understand that metabolism is really the totality of all the chemical reactions that are occurring within a cell. Now, single-celled organisms, all that metabolism that occurs for the direct functioning of that individual, but even as humans or plants, as this class is about, multicellular organisms also have their own metabolisms as well. So when we're talking about metabolism, we're talking about the total chemical reactions that occur within a cell to keep that cell functional. There are two sort of main types of chemical reactions that we can talk about, or metabolic sorts of reactions rather. We can talk about anabolic reactions or catabolic reactions. Anabolic reactions are where small molecules are put together to form bigger molecules. Anabolic reactions require energy inputs from cells. Or catabolic reactions where you start with a larger molecule and break it apart into smaller ones. And those catabolic reactions release energy. So they're sort of opposite sides of the same sort of coin. Breaking down and building molecules. The chapter then talks a little bit about energy, what energy is, how energy transfers. The movement of energy through systems is important. It talks a little bit about a concept called activation energy, which moves or makes chemical reactions possible to occur, and how enzymes influence the activation energy of chemical reactions. Then the chapter moves into glycolysis, which is really just the breakdown of sugars to produce ATP. And remember that ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is sort of the ultimate energy source when we're talking about cells. It's that little bitty molecule that break that free phosphate off the end of the molecule, and that breaking of that chemical bond releases the energy that cells are actually putting to use. The chapter sort of finishes up talking about fermentation and some other different sort of energy pathways. So that's chapter 4. That's obviously not in depth on any of that material, but that should give you a good starting point and some expectations for what to look for when you're reading through chapter 4. Chapter 5 is about photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is specific to plants and some photosynthetic bacteria, but almost all plants undergo a process of photosynthesis. And anytime you see a green plant out there, it's photosynthesizing. Photosynthesis depends on solar inputs, so inputs from the sun. The energy source that's driving photosynthesis is the sun. The parts of the plant where photosynthesis is occurring usually are going to be in the leaves, right? The leaf is sort of this shape, and within the mesophyll of the leaf are these large amounts of photosynthetic cells. We've already talked about that a little bit, right? Now, for example, though, some plants have photosynthetic stems. My cactus, for example. Remember, these spines are modified leaves. The stem, however, is photosynthetic and green. So with plants where photosynthesis is occurring, it's going to have this green pigment. And these green pigments are contained in organelles of the cells called chloroplasts. So the book is going to talk about where specifically within an individual cell this photosynthesis is occurring as well. So it's important to know where in a plant photosynthesis occurs and then where in the cells of the plant does photosynthesis occur. Photosynthesis is really this chain of chemical reactions along enzymes that are placed within the membranes of the cell. We're going to sort of work through the where photosynthesis occurs and then sort of through the functionality of how that photosynthesis occurs. And there's two main reactions within photosynthesis. It's called the light reaction and the Calvin cycle. If you're reading an older text, it may say the light reaction and dark reactions, but I think the terminology is moving more towards light reactions or the light dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle. Chapter 5 finishes up talking about energy cycling, so how energy is moving through, say, larger ecosystems, and what sort of role plants are playing in the cycling of energy through bigger systems. Plants are really fundamental organisms for life on this planet. Prior to photosynthetic organisms being on Earth, the atmosphere did not have the abundance of oxygen that it does. Oxygen is used up rapidly in chemical reactions. And so the atmosphere prior to photosynthesis evolving was really an anoxic environment. And so the appearance of photosynthesis as this evolutionary step really fundamentally changed what life on this planet looked like and allowed other organisms to exploit the oxygen available. It's released as a sort of toxic waste product of photosynthesis. It's not a toxic, but I mean it's a waste product of photosynthesis, and other organisms then are able to exploit that free oxygen in the atmosphere and put it to work within their own metabolism, so that they can gather higher levels of energy from the sugars that they have. So Week 7 is going to be kind of dense reading, and Chapter 4 again is about energy and metabolism, and so understanding how energy and metabolism fits into this process is important. All plant cells do undergo these metabolic processes. Just because plants are photosynthetic, they also are utilizing the sugars that they produced. So they just end up producing more than they need for themselves, or we simply exploit that sugar resource before they get a chance to use it. Either way, those sugars are in place either in the plant for their own use, or we as plant eaters or any other sort of herbivore is going to take up those sugars before the plant gets to use it. Plants are also utilizing oxygen in their metabolic processes. So they are going through these aerobic metabolism processes, very similar to what we do. However, they're releasing an additional or an extra amount of oxygen as a waste product for that photosynthesis. And organisms that are not photosynthetic are able to utilize that oxygen for their own needs. So plants are really intimately linked into food and energy cycles on this planet. If you want to go even sort of higher level in thinking about plants and energy and things like that, our fossil fuels are really fossilized plant material. Coal is fossilized swamps from the dinosaur era, and oil is fossilized photosynthetic bacteria and plankton and algae. So all of that energy is captured and stored solar energy that's being released. So the energy of plants and the importance of plants cannot be overstated at the global stage. So again, week number 7, we're looking at respiration and photosynthesis, and we're going to be looking at chapters 4 and 5 in concepts of biology. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put a message on Brightspace, and I'll try to get those answered as best as I can. All right, have a great week. Thank you.